There's something about the dust accumulated in abandoned places, the forgotten furniture, and the scent of mold that draws me in. It's as if these places carry echoes of the past, untold stories waiting to be uncovered. That's why, when I discovered an abandoned psychiatric hospital on the outskirts of my city, I knew I had to explore it. The place had been shut down over 30 years ago. They said patients were left to die inside when funding was suddenly cut. Other rumors spoke of doctors performing inhumane experiments, electroshock therapy, lobotomies. But of course, those were just stories, weren't they? Something to scare kids and keep trespassers away. That night, my two friends, Mark and Mary, and I decided to sneak into the hospital. We grabbed flashlights, backpacks with a few basic supplies, and our cameras. Getting in was easier than we expected. The main gate was just rusted, and with a little effort, we pushed it open enough to squeeze through. The cold night wind rustled the trees around us, whispering as if warning us not to go any further. The hospital loomed before us like a sleeping giant. Its windows were black voids in the structure, most of them without glass, just broken frames. Some doors were wide open, others hung from their hinges as if something had broken them from the inside out. The silence was almost absolute, except for the sound of our own footsteps on the leaf-covered ground. "This is going to be amazing," Mark whispered, raising his camera. He was always the most excited about these explorations. Mary didn't look so sure. She kept her flashlight pointed at the ground, illuminating the remains of rusted stretchers and wheelchairs. "I don't know. Something feels off about this place." I rolled my eyes, trying to keep the mood light. "Let's just get this over with. We'll take a look around, film some stuff, and leave. It'll be quick." We stepped through the main entrance and were met with the smell of dampness and rust. The hallway stretched long, with doors on both sides, some numbered, others without any identification. Faded medical posters were still pinned to the walls, remnants of a time when this place was teeming with life. But now, all that remained was silence and the echo of our footsteps. With every room we explored, we found more signs of abandonment: rusted hospital beds, scattered papers on the floor, cabinets left open and empty. But then, in one of the rooms, we found something strange. A bulletin board was still hanging on the wall, covered in notes and shift schedules. But in the middle of it, a message had been scrawled in what looked like charcoal, or maybe something worse. "He is awake. Do not look at him." We stood in silence for a moment, staring at those words. Mary swallowed hard. Was this written before the hospital closed, or has someone been here since? Mark chuckled, trying to mask his unease. "Probably just another explorer trying to scare people off. That's all, but I wasn't so sure." We kept walking through the hallways. The doors creaked at the slightest touch, their sounds echoing through the hospital like metallic whispers. On the third floor, we found what seemed to be the patient ward. The room doors had small observation windows, barred windows, and rotting mattresses. Some beds still had restraints fastened to their sides. That's when we heard the first noise, a low, dragging sound, as if something was moving slowly down the hallway ahead of us. Our bodies froze instantly. Mary gripped my hand tightly, and Mark aimed his flashlight toward the source of the sound. The hallway was empty. "It's probably just a rat or something," Mark whispered, but his voice trembled. "A rat the size of a human?" Mary shot back, her eyes wide. That's when the flashlight flickered, and for a second we saw it, something moving at the far end of the corridor. Something tall, its proportions all wrong. It didn't walk like a person, but rather as if it was trying to imitate one, twisting unnaturally. The darkness swallowed its details, but the little we saw was enough for panic to take over. "Run," was all I could say. And then the thing lunged. We ran without thinking. The hospital's hallways became a labyrinth of shadows and half-open doors. The sound of our footsteps echoed against the dust-covered walls, mixing with a noise that shouldn't have been there, the irregular dragging of whatever was chasing us. Mark led the way, holding the shaky flashlight that barely lit the path. Mary gripped my hand tightly, almost pulling me forward. I tried to focus on escaping, but at every turn my gaze kept flicking back. Something was following us, and worse, it was gaining on us. "The stairs!" Mark shouted, pointing to a rusted flight of steps leading to the lower floor. Without hesitation, we hurled ourselves downward, skipping 2 steps at a time. The metal groaned under our weight, and for a moment I feared it would collapse. When we reached the ground floor, we bolted through the main corridor, desperately searching for an exit. That's when we realized our mistake. The doors were locked. Mark shoved against the double-glass doors, but they wouldn't budge. Mary pounded on them, screaming for help. The sound reverberated down the corridors, a desperate plea that no one would answer. Locked? It's locked. Mary whimpered, banging harder. Then we heard it, a low click followed by a hissing laugh. Not human. Mark swung the flashlight toward the noise, and for an instant we saw it. Something was dragging itself into the corridor. Tall, too thin to be a normal person. Its arms were unnaturally long, its joints misaligned, like it was trying to mimic a human body without understanding how it worked. Its eyes? There were no eyes, only deep, empty sockets. Oh my God, Mark whispered, stepping back. The creature moved, and then suddenly the flashlight went out. Screams, bodies colliding, the sound of nails or claws scraping against the walls. In the darkness, I felt something brush past me. The air around me turned ice cold. I tried to run, but something grabbed my shoulder. A dry, cold, almost lifeless touch. My mind spiraled into panic. Mary screamed. Mark screamed. Then, silence. When I got the flashlight back, I don't know how, it flickered on again. I was alone. There was no one around me. No sign of Mark or Mary. The hospital was completely silent, except for the hammering of my own heart. I swallowed hard and tried to stay calm. Mark? Mary? My voice came out shaky, almost a whisper. Nothing. And then from deep within the corridor, the laughter returned. I knew I had to move, but my body refused to obey. The laughter seemed to fill the entire hallway, as if the very walls were mocking me. Each echo distorted, making it impossible to tell where it was coming from. Swallowing my fear, I slowly stepped backward, keeping the flashlight raised. The beam trembled in my hand, sweeping across the grimy floor and peeling walls. There was no sign of Mark or Mary, only the eerie emptiness of the abandoned hospital. Mark? Mary? My voice was barely louder this time. The silence answered back. I tried to take a deep breath, but the air felt heavier, like something unseen was watching me. And then the sound came again, this time closer. A door to my right slammed shut on its own. I swung the flashlight toward the noise, but the room was empty. The small window on the door was cracked, its broken glass reflecting distorted shapes as my light wavered. That's when I noticed something in the reflection. A shadow behind me. I turned instantly, but there was nothing. My heart pounded and a chill ran up my spine. I needed to get out. Now, I spun around and ran. The corridor seemed longer than before, stretching infinitely. The doors blurred past in my peripheral vision, my breath growing more erratic. Then, out of nowhere, a pale, twisted arm shot out from one of the open doors, reaching for me. I screamed and swerved at the last second, stumbling and falling to my knees. The flashlight slipped from my grasp, spinning across the floor and casting frantic shadows along the walls. I didn't dare look back. I just grabbed the flashlight and kept running. Finally, I turned a corner and froze. At the end of the hallway stood a figure, tall, thin, its limbs far too long to be human. Its face was a mask of emptiness, black voids where eyes should be. The thing just stood there, motionless, as if waiting. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't obey. Then the thing tilted its head to the side and began to move. Not walking, not running, but gliding toward me as if carried by the air itself. I ran without looking back, feeling its presence closing in. My legs burned, my chest ached, but I didn't stop. The exit had to be close. It had to be. Then something grabbed my ankle. I crashed face first onto the ground, pain exploding through my body. I tried to get up, but cold, bony fingers wrapped around my leg, dragging me back. I kicked, screamed, thrashed. The flashlight flickered wildly. And then, at the last moment, a whisper brushed against my ear. "You should have never come here." Everything went dark. The darkness swallowed me like a suffocating, freezing embrace. My body felt suspended in emptiness, unable to move. A low buzzing filled my ears, and slowly I realized I was still conscious. But something was wrong. I opened my eyes. The hospital around me was different. The once crumbling, decayed walls were now clean, illuminated by the cold glow of fluorescent lights. The stench of mold and rust was gone, replaced by the sterile scent of antiseptic. I was back in the past? I pushed myself up with difficulty, my entire body aching. The doors to the patient rooms were open, and from within, whispering voices murmured incomprehensible words. I took a hesitant step forward, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then I saw Mark and Mary, but something was wrong with them. Their bodies were pale, their eyes hollow and empty, their mouths slightly open as if they wanted to scream but couldn't. I tried to approach, but their faces twisted in agony, and then, like dust in the wind, their bodies disintegrated before my eyes. My knees nearly buckled. What was this? What was happening to me? Then the hospital began to shake. The lights flickered, and the walls distorted, as if the building itself were alive and breathing. A bone-chilling cold ran down my spine as I felt a presence behind me. A team of urban explorers entered the abandoned hospital. Cameras in hand, they documented every shadowy corridor, every room overtaken by time. At the end of one hallway, they found a flashlight lying on the floor. Next to it, scratched into the wall in jagged, desperate letters, was a message. I'm still here. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more.